Welcome to The Human Athlete, a podcast about life after sport and how to win it. I'm Jared Markowitz. I started this show because I've always been fascinated by what happens after the final whistle, when athletes have to rebuild purpose, discipline, and identity outside of competition. Every episode, you'll hear honest conversations with former athletes who are learning to lead, perform, and live with meaning beyond the game. Because the lessons sport teaches us can help us all live stronger, more intentional lives. Today's guest is Jesse Tupac. Jesse Tupac is a highly experienced volleyball coach with over 20 years in the game, working with athletes across 4 continents and at every level, from youth to the international stage. He spent 15 years coaching Division I volleyball across major conferences, including the Big Ten, Big 12, and Mountain West, mentoring 8 All-Americans and leading teams to multiple conference championships, NCAA tournament appearances, and a Sweet 16 run. On the international side, Jesse is one of the few coaches to earn medals with multiple national teams, including a gold medal with Team USA at the 2015 Pan American Games and a silver medal with Australia at the 2017 World Grand Prix. He also served as an alternate coach for the 2016 Olympic Games. He began his career playing volleyball in Southern California and played collegiately at UCLA under legendary coach Al Skates. Today, Jesse continues to impact the game through coaching, leadership, and a deep commitment to helping athletes grow, compete, and develop a lasting love for volleyball. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I want to get started with this because I think this is where our conversation started is, my criteria as it is for the show is Division I athletes or beyond who then, progress to some meaningful excellence after sport. And in a lot of ways, you had a very unique experience with high-level volleyball that I would love for you to just share with the audience, because I feel like after we talked initially, that's had a huge or played a huge part in the way you now coach, inspire, impact.
Yeah. So I grew up playing the sport. I'm from Southern California, which is a hotbed for volleyball, especially on the men's side of the game, because the men's side of the game is so much smaller. It's a little bit more regionalized in our country. I ended up becoming one of the top players at my position in my class when I was graduating high school and was recruited to play at UCLA. And then my freshman year, the summer between my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college, I actually had that effectively ended my playing career. And I continued to try to play for the first few months of my freshman year of college, and got to the point where I wasn't able to walk by the end of the day every single day. And so realized I had to stop competing in sport, but then quickly got into coaching and started coaching that same year, my freshman year of college, on the women's side of our sport. And that was 20 years ago. And now in the last 20 years, I've coached everything from 6-year-olds to Olympians on multiple continents at every level of the game. And it's been awesome to be able to stay in the sport and impact the game and impact young athletes and old athletes too. I've coached people that were older than me when I was with the national team, but to continue to carry on that love of the game, but also to give back to a sport that gave so much to me when I was competing myself.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think that's something that's unique for me, at least, right? Because I'm a Midwest boy. I grew up, born and raised in Wisconsin, still live in Wisconsin, and the men's culture around volleyball here is there's pockets, right? But the way that it sounds like down there, I mean, like it is one of the sports, and I recall just seeing some incredible athletes playing the game. And I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about that culture of men's volleyball in the South, and just your experience with it.
Yeah, volleyball, vendors of the sport, volleyball is a very inclusive community, and it's one that actually people continue to play the sport long into later years of their lives. And sometimes they transition to sand volleyball, to beach volleyball, because that's a little easier on your joints, and you can do that a little bit longer. But it's definitely one where it's a very small and very tight-knit community. And so I was lucky that when I got hurt, there are still a lot of different avenues for me to stay involved. And initially that was through coaching. And that's kind of grown from there into a lot of different ways. But for me, coaching was the that as I stayed involved with the community, that I was able to take some of the lessons, because I got to work with some pretty incredible coaches and some pretty incredible people during my playing career, but also career. Two things became massively impactful. One, I wanted game in a way that was a net positive for people physically and mentally, right? There's some ways that people teach sport that they don't make sense biomechanically, and so they lead to some overuse injuries because you're trying to do things too hard. And so finding a way to have some identity outside of your sport is really important. But then also I wanted to help them develop skills that were going to help them within their sport, but also going to help them after sport as well. And so finding a way to impact that as somebody who was no longer playing was really huge for me as a coach. But it was all a part of the fact that the volleyball community is really, really supportive of that. And the cool thing about volleyball in particular as a sport is that a lot of we're a younger sport relative to
Sure.
some other sports out there like baseball and football and basketball. But a lot of the coaches that were in like the original generation of great coaches in our sport were also educators, and they worked in either education or in motor learning research. And so our sport in particular is very mindful of motor learning principles and biomechanical principles in the way that we teach it, at least in certain pockets of coaching within our sport. So
Yeah.
that became a really impactful thing for me when I was giving back to my community, and it was one that I could rely on because the community, especially on the men's side of the game, is super involved in that particular area, in that realm.
I mean, that's awesome because I mean, I feel like there's so much, and it becomes this nature of, the younger you compete, the younger you elevate your game in all these different club-based sports nowadays. Like you have to specialize earlier and earlier, or you have to spend so much time in the sport. There's not enough time being spent on just building foundational skill sets, which is becoming clearer and clearer with all the overuse injuries, the things that are happening to kids. I mean, Tommy John surgeries are happening to kids now at age 10 in baseball. That these foundational, just structural movement training is so critical to the game, or well, to any athletic endeavor and longevity in the sport, which is ultimately what we all want for it. We want, whomever it is doing it to be able to do it as long as they want to, as long as they want to be competitive with it. We good?
Hey,
Yeah, I got you.
can you hear me?
Yes,
All
I
right.
can.
Sorry, I lost you during the middle of that question.
Yeah, your network's been a little bit dicey. I don't know if it's. I don't think it's mine. Is it yours?
I'm checking it right now, and it says I've got full bars and that the gigs are good. Let me see. This might kick me off.
Go ahead, try it.
All right. All right. Am I still here?
I still got you.
All right. Is that any better?
It is right now, and it kind of your picture gets blurry.
Okay.
It goes in and out. I'm getting little notifications on my screen that your network is struggling. That's what it says.
Is this better than it was before, or is this worse than it was before?
It's about it seems maybe a little bit more consistent right now.
Okay.
But it's hard to say.
sorry, we just moved into a new place and we got what was considered the best internet in town. And
Because they all say
sometimes,
it's the best.
right. It's high
Uh-huh.
speed, 5K,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
And yeah, yeah. I'm looking at our, like you log in and it says it's telling us we've got all this stuff. I can hotspot my phone, but I think this is probably the fastest I got.
It's gonna be the fastest that you have probably right now, at least. Well, why don't we do this? Let's go back to that question. Let's keep rolling. And honestly, man,
Sure.
if we feel like we need to, like at the end of the day, if the recording comes out crappy and we need to redo this, like I don't feel like we would have a problem doing the conversation over or just elaborating and taking it from wherever either. Because I mean, that's if that needs to happen, so be it. So
Yeah. Awesome.
okay. Um, so let's go back to. I'm trying to think where we kind of left off. We left off with the motor learning, and then you went back before that. So the question was more tied to your experience of. Let's go back to that, like your experience of volleyball in the southern part of the country versus northern. So I'll go back and kind of walk back through that question a little bit, and then let you go and elaborate. Cool. All right. With the differences in male volleyball, especially with what I saw in growing up in Wisconsin and then now being in the Madison area, I've seen, especially in the Madison area, there are pockets of boys volleyball being played, but it's not everywhere. Where it seems like, and what you're saying, Southern California, and I feel like Arizona falls in that category too. There's just this really resurgence or growth in boys and men's volleyball. I'd love for you to just talk about that, your experience with that, because it's something that I don't know and I'm curious to learn more about, but I think it's valuable for the audience to understand how that shaped your growth and development with sport. And then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Volleyball on both sides of our sport, with both genders of our sport, is a really inclusive community. And specifically on the men's side of the sport, what's been really cool for me, especially as I got into the coaching side, is that our sport in general is a relatively young sport relative to baseball or basketball or cricket or even sports like football. But a lot of the original coaches within our sport, particularly on the men's side of volleyball, were all educators that either came from educational research and were literal practitioners. They were high school teachers, they were college professors, or they came from motor learning research. So there's this huge coaching tree within men's volleyball that actually starts at the very top with Carl Nunn, who recently passed away in the last few years. But Carl was professor emeritus of motor learning at BYU, where he was also the head men's volleyball coach. And so, particularly in the men's side of our sport, especially in the US, there is a massive influence from both the motor learning research field and in the biomechanics research field that has allowed the USA in men's volleyball in particular to have wild success at the international level. Given that we actually have a relatively small population of men playing the sport within our country. So, for instance, we've won multiple gold medals on the men's side of the game. And I don't know the exact figures now, but we had as many men playing volleyball in the U.S. as there were men playing in Italy, but we've got a population in the U.S. 10 times the size of Italy's,
Sure.
right? Whereas
Yeah.
on the women's side of the game, we have 10 times more volleyball players in our country than any other country in the world.
Right.
Right, and
Right.
so that impacts some of the way that the game was coached. But because of the background in motor learning and biomechanics that came from the men's side of the game, it was incredibly impactful for me as a coach and the way that I came up in the sport after my competing days.
Well, and I think that in the realm of sport right now, and it's gotten more and more prominent since I was a kid growing up to where my kids are now. It's the specialization is happening earlier and earlier, and I think probably more so than the specialization is the fact that to be considered good or to get good enough to play at the higher levels, you just got to play all the time, and your schedule gets overwhelmed with playing the sport rather than learning how to move your body. And my experience when it comes to somebody who's built a gym around training people to move and move well and then move with purpose, meaning with strength and productivity and power, and then letting that apply to wherever you want to take it. um, we've had the most success with individuals who come in and and we teach them, right? So teaching them how to squat or how to change a pattern of their movement, and they go like this and they pick it up. We'll ask them, well, this is my question at this point. I say, did you involve yourself in dance, gymnastics, or martial arts growing up? And usually the answer to one of those is yes, which is why they have the ability to understand how their body moves. And there's so many kids, and I have this memory of these two kids who ended up being really, really good basketball players. And they were about my daughter's age, 9, 10 years old. They could not figure out how to do a lunge. And more importantly, they couldn't figure out how to skip. And in my head, I'm going, you have all these incredible skills and can do things with the basketball that I could never fathom. And I played multiple years longer than you did. And yet, the foundational skills of being able to do a lunge or skip are just lost on you. And I mean, to me, that's setting them up and so many kids up for failure and or early exit from sport versus what you're talking about. I mean, like, can we take that culture and bottle it up and spread it around all these other sports out there right now? That just sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the goal, right? And it's fun now, having gone through all the different stages of my coaching career, having coached collegiately, having coached professionally and internationally. Now I get to work with a youth volleyball club, and so I work with 6 to 18 year olds, and the concepts are still the same.
Of
Um,
course.
but originally, I mean, my career ended because of injury, and that was not a pleasant experience for me as an individual.
Yeah.
And I had to go through my own journey with that. But it also happened right when I had started coaching. And so when I started coaching, I had two main goals. And goal number one was that I wanted to teach the sport in a way that positively impacted the athletes I worked with physically and mentally, right? And I say physically and mentally because, unfortunately, in all sports, it's not just volleyball, but in all sports, most coaches have a tendency of coaching the way that they were coached, and that's both with the style of the environment, the learning environment that they get, but also with the technical keys or the ways that they teach you to perform the skills. And not all of those ways are the most biomechanically sound. And so I wanted to make sure I was teaching the sport in a way that was biomechanically sound, where when whenever those athletes turn 40 or 30 or whenever they decide to have a family, they can pick up their child without back pain, right?
Yeah.
And that's really huge. And then the other side is the mental burnout too, right? If you specialize super early, not only are you putting a huge load on your body physically, but you're also putting yourself up to the potential for burnout, right? And that really brought me up too, is I wanted the athletes I worked with, to help develop skills, obviously, that will help them be really self-sufficient and great within sport, but also after sport as well. And that requires a balance in your life between whether you call it work-life balance or sport-life balance. Like, we have to have some sort of balance in our life, and that balance doesn't have to be 50-50. Like, you get to choose the way that those scales are tipped, because I can tell you, I've got a lot of Olympians that the scales are like 90-10, right? And
Yeah.
they're very happy with the 90-10 balance,
Sure.
but they have to have the 10. They have to have that 10%, or they're going to lose their minds and they're going to burn out, and it's not going to be positive, right? And maybe the flip side of that is like our adult beer league. Maybe it's like 20-80, right? But like, there's
Right.
got to be some balance in between that allows you to exist and continue to be with losing your minds, right? And the cool thing is that the skill that you're required to develop during your athletic career, but will also benefit you whenever that athletic career ends, whether it's when you're 22 and you graduate from college, whether it's when you're 42 and you've played in your fifth Olympics and your body is just done, or when you're 18 and you tear a tendon in your foot and you can no longer jump touch 11.5. And yeah, you're not 6'10".
Easy, easy. You don't need you bragging about what you could go.
Well, anymore, so clearly that's
Right.
not
Yeah.
happening. So, right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think that, so I do want to touch on that, I think, and we'll come back around to this, because I think the idea of coaching into that balance is key. But you know, for you and your experience as an athlete, and we don't need to go into the absolute depths of this because obviously um, your passion is the here and now and the coaching piece, and I love that. And I really wanted to expand on that. But what parts of your experience going through um, a significant injury that really just you know cut, I would say probably a dream for you short. Um, what did you learn from that that you feel has had the biggest impact on how you now coach or how you now communicate with athletes?
Yeah. It forced me. It forced me to create identities around myself that weren't involved in sport. That weren't involved with not only sport, but just like physical expression. I mean, I literally got to the point where I could not walk at the end of the day. That even like walking in sand was impossible. And I had been so used to. I'm not the biggest athlete in the world. I'm not 6'5", 240. Right.
Hmm.
I look like a normal person walking down the street every single day. But I was able to express myself physically because I jumped really high and I was really fast and I knew the sport relatively well. And so to have that gone really forces you to re-examine who you are, right? And you don't need to have an injury to have that forced upon you. You could just graduate, right? You could run out
Right.
of eligibility. Uh,
Absolutely.
you could you could get beaten out, right? Like my
Yeah.
wife played on the women's national team, and she was one of the top liberos in the world, and she wasn't the number one libero in the world, and that's the person that went to the Olympics
Mm.
instead of her, right? And so at some point in your life, you're going to be faced with the eventuality that like sport, at least in a highly competitive setting, might be over for you. And you still have to find a way to exist and to take care of your body physically, mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally, spiritually. And that's going to be really challenging if the only way that you see yourself, the only way that you identify is as an athlete or within your sport. And so, yeah, that journey is tough for sure. But the more structure you have, the more people you have around you, and honestly, like all the skills that you used to develop as an athlete are the ones that are going to benefit you post sport. You just have to realign the direction that you're pointing that skill set at, or how you're utilizing it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that word is dead on alignment. Um, because I'm curious. So you mentioned that Olympian who right now in their point in their life right now where they're at, they're like, yes, 90% volleyball, 10%, whatever the other 10% is. And because that's what they realize, I only have so long to do this. And I think that a lot of high level athletes, they realize that at some point, hopefully during their prime, that I only have this opportunity for so long. I have to just really put all my chips in here and do this. So my question to you as a coach is how are you how are you talking to that athlete and where they're at, because you don't want to take that away from them either, while making sure that, like you said, you have a perspective that's valuable to them and is going to be valuable for you as a coach to be able to impress upon them that without some balance, without some off switch, you're going to burn out, you're going to get hurt, you're going to do something detrimental to your body that's potentially lifelong. So how are you communicating to those really top level individuals who realize I'm in the prime of it, I have this opportunity, I have to seize it?
Yeah, yeah. I think obviously step one is just awareness. Right? We have to at least have the conversation because then we can start thinking about it. And really, everybody's situation is different, right? You might be in a spot where that awareness helps you recognize that there's a light at the end of the tunnel that you have to prepare for.
Mhm.
There's actually this, and I'm sure you can find it somewhere online, but there was a phenomenal interview. It's literally titled "The Interview with Kobe Bryant,"
Mm.
and it was right after he had torn his Achilles, and he was working to get back, and he had just come back from tearing his shoulder, or I can't remember what order the injuries were in, and he was at a point. He's like, I know I probably only have 2 to 3 more seasons left, in the
Yeah.
NBA. And so he was preparing for that eventuality ahead of time, right? But the reality is that's not just going to help you post sport. There was an athlete that played for our men's national team. His name was Reed Pretty. Reed was a four-time Olympian. He won a gold medal in 2008. He won a bronze medal in 2016. He almost played in a fifth Olympics on the sand after his indoor career was done. And Reed had played professionally overseas. Again, we don't have pro leagues here in the U.S. We have some women's pro leagues now. We don't have any men's pro leagues here. But he had played in Russia at one point. And he had shared with a colleague of mine, a coaching friend of mine, that one of the years he was in Russia, his family had gone overseas with him and his wife and his young child. And he said that was probably the best thing for his playing career at that point, was because he had to go home and be a dad at the end of the day. And he couldn't just be pissed about practice, right? Like, he couldn't be mad that he didn't first ball side out 20 times in a row. And again, that's his 90-10. Look, his family came with him to Russia for 9 months so he could go make $1 million and be ready for the Olympics. So he needed that 10% of being with his wife and his child at the end of the day. But that 10% also is what made his 90% really, really good. That's awesome. I had a player that I coached at the University of North Dakota. I just finished 4 years there as the head coach. And we had an athlete who's currently playing professional volleyball. But she played her fourth and her fifth year with us. And her fifth year, she was the number one player in the conference offensively. And she was a first team all conference player. And she had a job at a coffee shop. And we talked every day about it. And she didn't need the job. She was on scholarship. And at college athletes these days that are on scholarship get an unbelievable amount of money, far above and beyond what it takes to actually pay to go to college. So she had no reason to work at a coffee shop, but she did because she loved having people that weren't in sport, that were her friends, that she could hang out with and not be 100% in that space all the time. And so when I'm working with athletes, part of it is whatever your balance is, whether it's 10% or 30%, whatever it might be, you probably want to find that, because that's actually going to benefit you now within your athletic career, so that you have an outlet where you're not constantly consumed and burning out, because it'll actually extend that career and make you better while you're in it. And then whenever that career ends, that's going to give you some lifelines and some outlets to latch onto as you continue to figure out what to do with that other 90%, 7% that you had previously been occupying with your sport.
Well, I mean, that's incredible, because I feel like that is a big part of the identity crisis that I hear a lot of athletes go through when they talk about what happened to them after sport. Is in their story, it's I miss the locker room the most. I miss those connections. I miss the people. I miss the teammates. And the idea of making friends outside of sport so that you have a team, connections, when that sport ends and the locker room splits up and you all go your separate ways because everybody graduates. I mean, that has to be so powerful for her. And that's got to just be something that, I mean, I feel like if I was coaching athletes like that, I want to tell them the same thing. Hey, go get a job. Go find a hobby that you can spend some time doing to connect with people you don't know. Pick up chess. Pick up, whatever random thing that it is, so that you have this other friend group to go and engage with. To one, separate yourself from the sport a little bit and give yourself some decompression time, but two, to have a life away from it.
Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of sayings in coaching that I love, but one of my favorite sayings is that the best coaching is reminding people of things that they already know, right? And ultimately, like, I want to teach you the sport, and then I just want to keep reminding you the things that you already know about our sport so that you can go do them really well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you said there, I think, is also a chance for us to remind people of things they already know. It's really scary to go out and meet new people, right? Especially in this world, like nowadays, people are all raised on social media, and like actual like face-to-face interaction is terrifying. That was actually total side note, but one of the things that I did when I got hurt and I stopped playing was I deleted all my social media, and that was maybe one of the things that helped me
Oh, I bet.
reactivating. I still don't have any social media like 20 years later. Highly recommend. I know nobody will do it, but it's great if you actually want to try it. But I think really we want to remind them of things that they already know. And the reality is that if you're doing that and you're an athlete, you've spent your entire life playing on different teams. You went from your high school team to a club team or a travel team. You went to a college team. You've gone to tryouts. You've gone to camps. You've gone to clinics. And what that means is that you've spent years and years and years getting reps of going up to strangers that you've never met and immediately forming a bond and getting to know them deeply and having conversations and creating trust. That's what friendship is. So it actually turns out that athletes have had more reps creating friendships than people who don't ever interact with people in person. And you have this incredibly built-in thing. Like I coached college volleyball for 15 years. Every 2 to 3 years, you're moving to another college in another state, and you have to completely form a new friend group. And what's cool is I could just go find whatever random YMCA has an adult volleyball league, and I just made 20 to 30 best friends that meet every Monday night or Friday night or whatever it might be in that town. And I found towns in the Midwest with 40,000 people that have a men's volleyball night. And I've been in places like LA and Denver that are multi-million person cities that have volleyball nights everywhere. So not only do you have a ton of reps at it as an athlete because you've always worked with getting to know new people in new environments, but you also have this like built-in thing that you can go and probably impress some people and have a new friend group immediately almost anywhere in the world with sport.
I mean, and you go and do something that you consider to be a hobby. It's nice to go there and just dominate it and have people hype you up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to be like the new person that everybody wants to be their doubles partner at the tournament on Saturday, right? And so
Yeah.
like there you go, you got new friends immediately.
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting that you say that because in a lot of ways, that's the first time I've heard it stated the way you just did. Is we talk about all these different skill sets of athletics, discipline, resiliency, team communication, leadership, things like that, where it's like, okay, yes, this is a athletics skill set, and this is a professional skill set. So from the standpoint of somebody transitioning their athletic success to professional success, that's important. However, when everything is said and done, and I can't remember who I was having this conversation with somebody, but it's a conversation I've had more than one time. You know, talk about what you want your funeral to look like. You want tons of people there expanding upon how impactful you were on their lives, i.e., friends, i.e., people you connected with, people that you had a meaningful, trusting relationship with, and how important at the end of the day those things are really to happiness more so than how much money is in your bank account from a professional career because you have athletic success tied to professional success. Not that that's not important, because in many ways it's important for us to live our lives and have money to do those things. But when you think about athletics as the ultimate creator of developing trust quickly and creating friends and connections quickly, I mean, what a crazy positive skill set that is.
Yeah, it's really cool having been able to work at the international level of our sport and being able, I was lucky enough. I got to go work with the Australian national team, and I was the only American with that group, and that in itself was such an awesome cultural experience for me. But then having been able to go to multiple tournaments where I would be sitting and competing with and against people that I don't even speak the same language with. But we still had this incredible bond through sport that allowed us to connect and be friends. And we couldn't even understand each other half the time. And that's so powerful. And I think the other example, or that's always been really impactful for me, is my wife. Again, she played on the women's national team. She was also one of the original members of the player executive committee that started Athletes Unlimited Volleyball in the U.S., which is now one of our. We currently have 3 professional volleyball leagues in the U.S. on the women's side of the game. And Athletes Unlimited is unique in that there's actually a volleyball league, a lacrosse league, a basketball league, and they previously had softball. But the Athletes Unlimited professional leagues are all based kind of around the idea of fantasy sports. So they're individually scored team sports where athletes can earn individual points during competitions. And what they do is they actually they have 44 athletes, so they have enough athletes for 4 teams. But every week they reshuffle the teams. So the top 4 individual point scorers in the league become team captains, and then there's a schoolyard pick to fill out the teams.
Cool. Love that.
And they do that for everything. They do it for softball, they do it for lacrosse, they do it for basketball, they do it for volleyball. And what's been really cool watching my wife compete within that environment, but then also she worked with the professional side of the softball league for a while, and we've gotten to talk with some of the other athletes that have gone through it, is how do you exist within an environment where every week you have an entirely new group of teammates, and you're going and you're competing against people that last week you might have been on their team.
100%.
And it just really puts this laser focus on the skills that are required to be great in the moment. And you kind of get rid of a lot of the BS that you realize like that's unnecessary, and it's just wasting our time from allowing us to be great as athletes. And when you get rid of all of that extra riffraff, it also helps focus you in not only within the athletic environment, but like, okay, what tools are important or what skills are important for me to develop a relationship with somebody?
Yeah.
If you're in speed dating and you get 20 minutes, how do you develop a relationship with somebody in 20 minutes, right?
Right.
How do you do it in an interview when you're trying to get a job or you're trying to go to grad school or you get your PhD or something like that too? And that's a skill like any other that we can practice and get better at.
So I want to ask a question about the Athlete Unlimited thing, because obviously you understand it well, just through your wife. I mean, because of the conversation that we're on, are those women forming essentially this like 44 person, I mean, obviously in the case of volleyball, 44 person like friendship group? Are they all just friends?
We all love to say that everybody's friends, but are you seriously think we can get 44 people in a room together and they're all going to be friends? I can't get a team of 12 to get in a room together and for all of them to get along every single, that's human nature. We're not all going to be friends all the time. But what becomes really laser focused is, regardless of our personal feelings towards each other, what is required for us to work cohesively together. Right? Like look, you go to war and you got one person from California, one person from Michigan, and one person from Texas, and one person from Georgia, all in the same platoon. They got to work together. Right? And it turns out that, last year when I was the head coach of the University of North Dakota, we had 4 middle blockers in our team, and one was from California, one was from Texas, one was from Georgia, and one was from Michigan, and they still had to work together. Right? So all of these skills are ones that we can get reps at and we can develop, but we have to determine like what is worthwhile, what is actually effective and efficient, and what is a waste of our time, and then stop spending time on that stuff. It's not important.
Right. Well, I mean, that's such a great skill set to have, because I mean that's what makes teams effective in today's world, right? It's not that you all have to come in and go, okay, yeah, we all believe the same thing, or we all have exactly the same pathway we've traveled. In fact, that's oftentimes the best teams are when you have diversity in those pathways, because then you can effectively challenge each other. But then it becomes,
if you have a level of respect, if there's a level of trust and understanding that that's an acceptable dynamic, if we're trying to achieve an ultimate goal of however you define success, with truth or objective accomplishment. But the diversity of thought is great if you have the understanding that you're willing to work with each other.
That's fair. So is that,
if you don't have that, that's impossible.
So in your experience though, that's okay. No, that's great. In your experience though, is that effectively communicated as a coach? Do you also need that leader on the team to do that? Is there a and or situation, or like how have you, what's your experience with that?
Honestly, I actually think that from a coaching staff perspective, I think it has to come from the head coach. I think it's really challenging if the head coach and then the assistant coaches aren't modeling and living that behavior, because then you're just a hypocrite, and it's really easy for people to see through it, and then it's really easy for them to also not do it themselves. I think from an athlete to athlete perspective, I actually think that creating a leadership structure within a team makes that more challenging, because it creates an environment in which certain people are and should speak, and certain people aren't and won't and shouldn't speak. And if you're trying to have an environment in which everybody can share thoughts, like if we're trying to have diversity of thought, if we're trying to have a place where the goal, whether it's truth or the most effective thing that we can do and operate, if we create an hierarchical environment where certain people only are allowed to speak in certain ways or at certain times, then we're not going to get that full thought. And we've actually already artificially shut out openness to ideas before even starting the conversation. And so you almost have to create an environment where everybody's given the opportunity to express their thought. The requirement is that if your thoughts are expressed, they either have to be researched and well thought out, or you have to be open to feedback, right? Because there are other people that also have thoughts that might be researched and well thought out. Going back to motor learning, there's a lot of people that coach in a lot of different ways. There's people that tell you where to load your arm as an attacker in volleyball, and it turns out sometimes when you load your arm here and you play for 30 years, you end up getting like 6 shoulder surgeries over those 30 years. And when you load your arm here, you don't. But for people that were to load their arm here and had a lot of success, or taught this for a long way, it's really hard to give up that. And that cognitive conflict, that cognitive dissonance is a challenging place to exist, especially if you didn't sign up for it, or if you didn't agree that that was something that was a part of the process of growing and getting better as a collective group.
Interesting. And so what I'm hearing from you then, and because I'm just curious from a coaching philosophy side of things, is, well, I guess I'll ask this from your perspective. What's your take then on the idea of captaincy with a team? Like how do you work that, or what's your take on that approach? Because what you're talking about is not necessarily what I'm hearing, at least, is not avoiding a hierarchy, but that there being some level of like, hey, everyone has a say, but at what point do you create some sort of hierarchy, or how does that work?
Yeah, awesome question. So again, my background is in education. I did my master's in education, so a lot of the way that I approach things is through that lens. And so, kind of like we've talked about in a couple different areas, one of the lenses that I'll approach almost everything is that everything in life is a skill, and all skills can be grown. It turns out that the Human Genome Project, they mapped the entirety of human DNA, and there is no genome or DNA that dictates whether or not you pass well in volleyball, right? Like there's nothing that helps you in your DNA throw a spiral, right? Like that doesn't exist, right? Yeah, like your height and like maybe your eye color, like those things might be coded, right? But like your ability to throw a spiral or your ability to like understand opening moves in chess is not in our DNA, right? Like chess didn't exist when DNA was being created, right? Like that's not a thing, right? And so those are all skills that we can grow. And so this is a skill that we can grow. Leadership is a skill that we can grow. And honestly, some of the biggest failures in leadership that I've seen in my coaching experience were when people expected somebody to be a leader senior year and were never given reps and opportunities to do it their junior year and their sophomore freshman year. And so what I've done with college programs, what I've done with club programs, is we rotate the leadership every week. And there's different combinations of people together, because leadership is a skill and all skills can be grown. And for you to grow your skill of leadership, you have to practice leadership. And so everybody's going to get an opportunity to practice their leadership when it's their turn to do so. Now, the cool part is that when you create that environment, I once had a freshman come in, and at the end of her freshman year, as she was entering the next group of freshmen, and they were asking her about this leadership structure, she said, "We don't have leaders, but we do have experts. We have people that are 4 or 5 years in this college program really freaking good at some of these things." And so they're experts, and experts are people that you can go to learn from. Which essentially, when you're in a sport, like a team environment, like your leaders are the people that you look to mentor your younger athletes. Mm-hmm. Our experts are the ones that have the expertise that they can then share with our less expert athletes, but expertise is not dictated by age or experience, right? Especially if you're a coach that's trying to turn over a program that hasn't been very successful. You might be bringing in younger athletes that are more expert at certain skills than your older athletes.
Right.
And that can be a challenge, right? If you're working with a national team and you have some AVCA player of the year that comes in after their senior year of college, and they might be better than some of your two-time Olympian veterans at certain things. And they might not, right? There's also some things that they got to learn. So rather than talking about leadership as something that is given through years of experience or age, what if we talk about expertise? And we all want to develop expertise. And there are certain people that have that expertise that we can look to as models. That can be within the coaching staff, they can be within the athletes, they can be even younger people. I think one of the coolest things that when we were able to create this environment at one of my previous programs was that I had an athlete that was a junior within our program that looked at some of our committed athletes that came to camp, and she was like, dang, they're better at that than I am. I can't wait till they get here so I can learn how she's doing that. Like, that's pretty cool. Because they're also going to learn a lot from you, because you're going to be a senior when they get here. And they're going to learn a lot from you. But if you can go to them and say, let me learn from you too, like, whoa, that's a totally different culture and environment. And then it allows that space for people to work together and to communicate and to trust at a way deeper level.
I mean, first of all, the maturity of an individual to be able to say that, and now we're talking about a woman who's 21, assuming she's a junior. I mean, man, that's some legit maturity. Have you found? I mean, so it sounds like with the idea of expertise that you found a way to maybe, and it's always hard to say systemized, right? But at the end of the day, we always want to find a way to take individuals like that junior you're mentioning, or these ideas, and kind of bottle them up and be able to recreate them over and over and over again. For you, with the idea of expertise or expert status as opposed to leadership, are you finding that that's the way you're approaching this idea of everyone learning from everybody else and building that cohesiveness? Is that kind of your philosophical approach to team cohesion?
Yeah. I mean, again, my lens is very much from a lens of education, and I think that awareness, that maturity in the athlete that you were just mentioning, her in particular, she's a great example because she was such a paragon of someone who is very physically talented. She had put in a lot of work to physically become strong and fast and athletic, but also to develop her skills. But she had terrible self-talk, and would never speak positively of her performances or her skill sets. And one of the areas with her and with all athletes, but with her in particular, that we really had to kind of unpack was that if we want to become great learners, like if we want to become great at our skills, we've got to be really great at learning our skills. And one of the requirements of being a great learner is to have an awareness of what you are good at and what you are not good at. Because if you're good at something and your self-talk or your mindset, which has been instilled in you over years from coaches and parents and people around you, if that's so negative that you can't admit when you're good at something, how are you going to focus on the things that you're not good at? It's going to be really hard to put your attention on the things that you need to grow if you can't admit that you're good at this thing over here, because then you're going to keep spending time on something that you're already proficient at. You're already reached a certain level of expertise in that. Not that we can't always grow skills and make them even better, but if you're like 9 out of 10 developed over here and you're 6 out of 10 developed over here, you probably want to spend more time in this space. And so for her and for all athletes, having an awareness of where you are with each skill that you're trying to develop without judgment is a crucial part of growing those skills in the first place, because then you can focus your attention way more efficiently and way more effectively. And in doing so and creating that awareness in your own level of comprehension and execution of skills that also allows you to recognize the same level of execution and comprehension of skill in others.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, you're either going to learn from them or you're going to be given an opportunity to help them learn from you. And in a competitive environment, we're all trying to get better. And sometimes the best way for you and I to get better is for us to compete against each other as hard as we possibly can. And so if I want to be really good, I need you to be really good.
Right.
And so for you to be really good, if I'm an expert at something, I got to teach it to you, then you can do it against me so I can try defending that all the time. So actually, the most selfish thing for my own development is to help you get really good really fast. So I have to play against you all the time.
I mean, I love that. I think that is a massively refreshing approach to it and a way to teach it to somebody, because I think most highly competitive individuals, male or female, are going to understand that mindset. Is that, yeah, when I play against the best people, I ultimately get better. Might it be frustrating? Absolutely. Might it be challenging? 100%. But that's all of a sudden, when you're doing that on a regular basis, playing against sub-level competition or even competition just as challenging is like, okay, I've done that. I've practiced harder than this. Yeah. All right. This is awesome. I'm curious because of what you're doing now and the role you're playing now. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're simply with like the Surfside Volleyball and the younger group, or if you're doing some collegiate stuff still also. But I am curious, as you're digging into teaching younger kids and developing them kind of through or up to the point of now heading off to college, what ways are you finding to start communicating this at earlier and earlier ages? Because I get that from a standpoint of when everybody shows up to a Division I NCAA program, everybody's there because they earned an opportunity. They were the best of the best effectively in their area or in their school, and were offered an opportunity to play, or at least play, maybe not on scholarship, but hey, you're good enough to get a shot at this and maybe earn the right to that. So they're all there for the same reasons. I think that, in my experience with, coaching, my daughters are 9 years old, so I'm coaching softball, right? And we've coached young kids in our gym also for years and years, just from a movement perspective. And there's some kids who really want to be there because they want to get better for whatever purpose it is. And then there's other kids who they're not being forced there by their parents, but in a lot of ways they just don't really care that much. And for me, that's okay. It's like, I'd rather that kid play sport as long as possible, because there's plenty to be learned about and learned through sport, even if they don't want to, or sometimes don't have the genetics for the elite. But there's plenty to be gained by staying in sport for longer and longer and bringing it along. So my curiosity is long-winded question, but how are you starting to cultivate that with younger individuals and then with a development program as opposed to collegiate programs?
Yeah. It's an awesome question. I think first and foremost, it's challenging to make a single system that's universal, right? Because kind of like you mentioned, there's going to be so many different types and levels of motivation, especially at these younger age groups. Like, at the college level, look, they don't all have the same reason for being there at the college level.
That's fair.
They might be more closely aligned, right? They might be more consistently in the same space, and hopefully at the college level you're recruiting, so you're recruiting all the people that have the same level of motivations, right? Or types of motivations. But even within that, there's going to be variations that exist. But more so at the youth level, for sure, you have people that maybe they don't like the sport initially. They're just playing because their friends are playing, and if they want to hang out with their friends, they got to go to practice. That's the only way to be with all those people, right? Or they're playing because their parents played, or their parents want them to do a sport, and this is like the sport they find like the least unfun, right? Like, this is the most fun one that they have. So like, all right, I've got to do something. So, and then there's also people that are like diehard, feverishly wanting to play in the Olympics, or they want to play college, or they want to just play as long as they can. And so, you have to decide to take into account learning, you have to first take into account the learner, right? And so, like with each individual person, you have to decide if you're the person that's trying to get them to do this, if you're a palms up coach, or if you're a palms down coach and you're trying to get them to do this, right? Like, hey, let's chill out, right? This is the first tournament of the year in 13U. This is not the Super Bowl. We can take a deep breath, right? And other times it's like, hey, y'all, like we do need to work a little bit harder. Like, come on, let's
Yeah.
be a little engaged here, you know? And so um, every situation is going to be different. But if I could give one system-wide kind of philosophy that I'll approach everybody with, it's at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily, especially with youth sports, like I'm not necessarily teaching you this sport for the sake of you winning at this sport. Sport is an incredible vessel to teach us lessons that ultimately like will help us get good at this sport if that's our goal, but also will help us be good at life, right? Like the club that I work for is in Hermosa Beach in Manhattan Beach, which is one of the more affluent parts of Southern California, which is already one of the more affluent parts of the country in general. And some of the athletes that we work with come from very affluent families and go to private schools, and the only place they ever lose in life is when they play volleyball. And those are lessons that they need to learn, right? And that's important because you're not always going to win at life. And learning how to be a gracious winner and a gracious loser are important skills. And learning how to move your body and to have some sort of athletic regimen that keeps you healthy is great. Whether it's yoga or it's surfing or it's skiing or it's volleyball or whatever it might be, right? And those are just life skills that we want to learn in general. And the cool thing is that at the very least, people are going to be more excited for volleyball practice than they are for math class. So I already have like a little bit of an advantage,
Yeah,
right? And maybe they're just excited to be hanging out with their friends at volleyball practice than they are to be doing volleyball. But if my job is to help you become a great learner, and the way that I help you become a great learner is through volleyball, volleyball doesn't need to be your main motivation. But if you learn to be a great learner, then if your main motivation is being an influencer or surfing or being a great spouse or friend or you want to cure cancer, learning how to learn through volleyball is also going to help you get really good at all of those other things.
Yeah.
I don't need you to have volleyball be your number one thing. Look, I had an athlete at North Dakota last year who's probably the best player that's ever come through that program's history. She was dominant on the court in every single match that we played. And her number one priority was PA school. But the skills that she learned within volleyball really benefited her when she was doing 10-hour shifts at the hospital. So much so that by her senior year of college, we call it our acknowledgement rule. Like, hey, if I send you an email or a text message, respond in some way. Just give me a thumbs up. Say, got the email, 24 hours, just let me know. And she's sending out grad school applications and talking to professors about letters of recommendation, and she's not getting responses for weeks at a time. She's like, why can't these people be more professional? But she's learned a lot of skills through her athletic career that help her be great in her professional career. So I don't need her to have volleyball as her number one thing. I need her to understand that the lessons that we're teaching her within volleyball are going to help her in so many areas of her life.
I'm speechless in part because that's really a part of why I've realized this podcast exists. Like for the audience that is younger, or even the audience of parents that have younger kids listening, to realize sport where you get a chance to play for the purpose of something like an objective is one of the best learning environments that exists. And allowing for individuals to do that and realizing that, and this is something that's funny because my daughters speak about this all the time. They are doing, like, they love gym class, they love art, they love music, and they've performed where they're doing physical things, they're doing singing and dancing and acting, and they come home and they say, "Oh, it was great. Like we didn't learn all week. We were preparing for this show, and we were doing all these practicing for these performances on the stage and practicing our dances." And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, "You guys have no idea how much you're learning right now.
Yeah.
and how important this learning is right now. You're learning to deal with people, to have people who are directing and follow directions and do it, and improvisation, all these different things that are happening that are just as important as sitting and studying math equations, possibly more in the grand scheme of life. Um, that's what you're saying, and that's the truth of sport. It is, in my opinion, the best learning environment that exists.
Yeah. And you're going to have some of those people that are uber passionate and they want to go 99-1 in their balance, right? And that's when you might do a little bit of this and say, hey, awesome. Now go get some physical recovery where you're not working your body and maybe get some ice cream, or play your favorite music, right? And you can watch film, but their level of engagement is going to be most aggressive towards their passion. And so you can find a way to engage that through learning whatever their passion is.
I mean, absolutely, and I think that in so many ways, it just feels to me like you are doing the right thing in the sense of like your profession, what you've been doing, because it's the underpinnings, like you said, of education that you have for this and your application of it to such a broad array of individuals. I mean, talk about impact. I feel like the way that you've done what you've done in all the different ways that you have is just a continual impact and reverberation. And honestly, because we got introduced through another podcast guest of mine, who, she's like, this, if there's a coach of mine that I want you to talk to, it was you. So that just speaks so highly of who you are and what you've done for so many years, and I mean, there's no reason you should stop, because I feel like you just have more and more people to impact.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate Peyton saying that as well. I learned this from other people, right? None of this stuff is exclusive to me, right? And I think that's the cool part, is that there's so many great coaches and people out there that are doing this in every sport, in every venture. It doesn't even have to be within sport, right? And so, kind of like I said at the beginning, I had so many great mentors as an athlete and as a coach, and it's kind of like shout it from the mountaintops. Like, this stuff works and it's effective and it helps people. And at the end of the day, if we're involved in sport at any level, it's because we're trying to help people. We're trying to help them get better at something, right? And maybe we want to scratch our competitive itch too, right? Because you can help people in other ways. But this is a fun way to do both of those at the same time, right? And
Absolutely.
so we want to help people. Let's go help them. And it turns out that there's more and less effective ways to do that. So let's learn the most effective ways and try to do them as often as we can.
Awesome, Jesse. Well, hey, I mean, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the information. And you already mentioned it, but there's no social way to find you. So if someone wants to connect with you and learn from you, or just connect, because I mean, I feel like for this podcast, a part of this too is trying to build a community of really good people who are doing amazing things, but ultimately are wanting to give back, because to me that's the purpose of this podcast. It's the purpose of coaching, of all the things, is to just find ways to expand your legacy through other people. How would somebody, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you or connect with you?
Yeah, the best way, you can email me, Jesse at surfsidevolleyballclub.com. It's on our website at surfsidevolleyballclub.com on our website there. So you can contact me that way. I'm happy to share any resources. I mean, that's what I do with the coaches at our club right now. And, I'm still working with some coaches at the college level and the international level. Just, at the end of the day, we all want to make this sport really successful within our country, and we want the athletes that we work with to be successful as well. So I'm always happy to share any resources, or to be a sounding board, or to work with anybody that's curious to do that.
Cool. Jesse, I appreciate that. We'll put the both the URL to Surfside Volleyball and the email in our show notes, so that everyone has access to that way too.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great conversation.
Thanks for listening to The Human Athlete. These conversations remind us that who we are beyond sport matters just as much as who we were in it. If this episode made you think, or helped you see your own story a little differently, share it with someone who might need to hear it. I'm Jared Markowitz, and until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and keep finding ways to win the game that matters the most: life.